I'm Pam Evanson.
I'm Dan Lappin, and this is Breaking Sales, a nonconformist take on rejecting the sales status quo. Join the Lappin 180 team as we break the tried and died sales tactics and techniques that are failing you and your prospects. Well, Pam, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
I honestly feel like I haven't seen you in like 2 months. Is there truth in that?
There's a little bit of truth in that.
So for our audience, Pam has been traveling a ton. This is one of her first days back, and I can't tell you how long. And we picked a good topic today. We are going to talk about something called comparison. It's when we compare ourselves, compare our performance to others, and what permeates and what is that domino effect that occurs.
I like the subject of comparison. I did do some research on comparison, and there are benefits to comparison. However, there's a fine line between it becoming a very unhealthy habit or becoming something that can help you greatly evolve as a human being. So I think it'll be interesting to hear the back and forth between our thoughts on comparison.
It's funny you say that. I didn't know you did research.
I did.
I've had this topic come up a few times in the past 30, 45 days with several different individuals. Right away, my gut instinct was, okay, I think there's a positive here because, and I could be wrong in the reason why, Pam, but I thought, you're comparing yourself, so maybe there's an aspiration component to this. Maybe there's something that you're seeing someone perform at a certain level, and you say to yourself, okay, I like that level. I like how they hold themselves. I like their poise. I like their skill. I like how they're moving about their business. I think I have that ability inside me. I think I can do that. To me, that would be the positive, but I could be way off on this.
No. When you start doing the research, there's a lot that comes up psychologically about the dangers of comparing yourself to others, but then some of the things that can become very positive about comparing yourself to others. And it talks about if you are comparing yourself to others in that negative way, you'll experience feelings of deep dissatisfaction, guilt, remorse, and start to actually engage in destructive behaviors when you compare yourself to others. But if you do it in a way, Dan, like you were describing, I want to understand what this person is doing so that it might actually benefit me. That's very different. And the reason I started researching it is actually because of you. There are a lot of things that you do that I compare myself to that I think is very healthy for me.
Uh-oh.
No, very, very healthy. You and I both are very conscious of how we're taking care of ourselves and our health and to be able to go the distance in our travel and our coaching. And so I often find myself wanting to understand what you're doing, wanting to compare what am I doing against Dan from a very positive standpoint so I can learn from it. We talk about this all the time, that we all walk around with massive blind spots and we all try to find ways to stay within our comfort zone. So I find myself comparing in a positive way because I want to be able to learn from you, not because I envy what you have or I want to be like that, but more because I want to learn from what you're doing. And I think that type of comparison can be very healthy. Now, to your point, I think most of us, however, do the other.
I'm guilty of both. I know that. And I know a lot of the folks that we coach are guilty of that. Mm-hmm. There's something about, right? And I know for our listeners, there's many of you out there that I think this is going to resonate with. You're driven. So there's something about being driven, competitive, impatient, and insecure, which is a mad motley of ingredients.
Agreed.
That comes together that, if managed properly, could be the catalyst for great performance But if not managed properly, right, it becomes the catalyst for an ongoing battle with your ego and an ongoing scenario of you're not really working on your blind spots.
I like that.
You know? And so, but again, I think it's such a fine line, like you said, because there's so many people that we coach that have those attributes. They are insecure. That's okay. They're also very driven. They're very competitive. And they have that innate intensity and urgency that they want things to get done and they want to do them now. They want to put the work in and they want to be successful, though, next week.
Agreed.
That's where comparison, I think, gets a little scary.
Well, you know, there's that famous quote by Theodore Roosevelt where he says, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think to your point, Dan, a lot of what we see in our clients is probably more in line with that quote, which is now, if all I'm doing is comparing myself and I'm associating a level of dissatisfaction as a result of comparing myself, then I think, wow, that is absolutely not healthy. You will never be able to experience joy if all you're doing is comparing yourself in a very unhealthy manner.
So let's create a little domino effect on that one. I mean, at the end of the day, I also believe comparison is a part of scarcity. If you're not performing at the level you know you could, if something's not clicking for you, if you're frustrated because you feel like you've put the time and the effort in, and then you see someone else around you that's achieving or experiencing an abundant flow of business or success, and they're achieving or experiencing accolades and recognition, I think that's right there. That's that moment where a person could start that negative comparison because they feel like they've put the work in. Why aren't they achieving it, right? They've put the dedication, the time, and the effort in. So why aren't they getting the recognition? Why aren't they getting the successes and the outcomes that they desire? Why is it these other people are? And that's really dangerous spot to be in because that is like one of those, what do they call those things in the ocean where it just kind of swirls around and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper? I know there's a name for it.
Not a riptide. What is that?
It's not a riptide.
No, it's not a riptide. What is that?
I don't know, but now I'm thinking
Tidal,
about
like a type. No,
I'm thinking
tidal?
about Pirates of the Caribbean now.
Well, that makes me think of Disney World. So now I'm happy.
So there's a domino effect for you. We went from me not knowing what I was talking about for a second in terms of the name to Pirates of the Caribbean to Disney World. Here we go. We're done.
But it's funny you say that. I'll give a shout out to one of my mentors, Randy McNutt. When I was in sales, I constantly compared myself to the top salesperson at the time. And all the time tried to figure out what she was doing, compared it to what I was doing. Why wasn't I achieving the same level of success? And I was starting to get upset and mad about it. Like, this person doesn't have anything that I don't have. And he stopped me and he said, you are doing this wrong, because it was his advice to try to figure out what she was doing. And he said, you're doing this wrong. You're trying to compare the two of you. What I asked you to do is understand, learn what she's doing to help you figure out maybe what you're not doing. I didn't ask you to compare yourself to her. I told you to learn from her and try to understand her approach. And that's Dan. It's funny, again, when you brought up this topic, I did find myself gravitating more towards how I compare myself to you today, but more in that healthy manner of understanding and learning from you, not being resentful that I'm not like you. And I do think there is a fine line. And I do think if we're not careful, I felt it. I felt it when I was in sales. I was very resentful. I was angry. I started making excuses about why she was more successful, started contributing some of her success to things that probably weren't fair to her. So it is amazing how it can cause us to create some very unhealthy thoughts like scarcity, low intent, and oh my goodness, I don't think without that advice to say, hey, stop, you're not doing this appropriately. I don't know how long and it probably went on for a good year where I was comparing myself in a very negative manner to her level of success versus mine.
How did you pull yourself out of it? Do you remember?
I did. I sat down, again, not because of my own doing, because I was forced. I would like to say I was self-aware enough to do it. But I sat down with her. And instead of poking holes in what she was doing, I tried to just, again, put my bias aside, my experiences and my lens aside, and really try to learn what she was doing. Not so that I could copy it, but so I could understand it and figure out if there were things that I could be doing in my own way that would lead to my growth. And I think, too, I like to replace the word comparison with growth. I'm not comparing myself because I envy you. I'm comparing because I'm trying to grow. And so I sat down with her and we met for about an hour, and I'll never forget it. And I absolutely learned some things that I took for granted in how she was performing in our company versus me. And it was a really good exercise for me. And so I will tell you, I don't think if that had happened, I would be one of these people.
Two phrases came up when you were talking, and I thought about comparison. One is self-preservation, and one is hiding spot.
Ooh.
You know, think about it, right? You've worked so hard, and you're not clicking the way you want to click. But instead of doing a deep dive on how hard are you working, instead of doing a deep dive on yourself about your routines, your behaviors, how you manage your time, where you put your time and energy, and your attitude toward it, instead of going through all of that, which is a lot of hard work and self-analysis, it's a lot easier at the end of the day to come home, turn to your spouse, and pick a hiding spot with comparison. He's successful because of X, or she's successful because of Y and Z, right? There's self-preservation involved in that too, because you don't have to face the music, right? You can go out to a bar with friends. You could be at a happy hour with colleagues. And sure enough, right? You're feeling some insecurity. So what do? You start talking about and giving excuses or making up stories about why someone else is successful and you're not. I think comparisons, and I've been guilty of it.
Me too.
It's such a dangerous spot for any of us to go to. The key is to pull yourself out of it. Use a little humility and say, hey, that person, they're successful. Good for them. However they got there, good for them. Did they create their own luck? Absolutely, right? But at the same time, they still were successful. And recognizing that and appreciating that is more about the abundance versus the scarcity of the self-preservation. And let me create some stories and some hiding spots here so I don't have to change anything or do anything different. And that's where, like, I just feel like it's a lead brick that just hits the floor.
Agreed. I would encourage all our listeners to figure out how you can use this word called comparison to propel you, to propel growth, not go down this unhealthy path of anger, resentment, and shooting holes in somebody else's success so you can feel better about yours.
Scarcity versus abundance.
You got it.
I hate to say it. It sounds really so simple, but that's what it is.
You are correct.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Sales. If you want to get engaged with us outside of the podcast, be sure to go to our website, lappin180.com. Go to contact us. You can also engage with us on LinkedIn at Dan Lappin or Lappin180.